This morning. Always some trouble in this world, but there is a way to find some peace. We'll discuss that today. I have an image here up on the television screen. Please take note. My friend Amiti shared something with me the other day, and I thought it might be appropriate for our topic today. We've been going through the 9 expressions or practices of bhakti. We've done hearing, shravanam, chanting, kirtanam, meditating, smaranam, serving the lotus feet, serving those access points, padasevanam. Archanam is the temple worship. We've done vandanam, prayer. We've done dasyam, embracing the disposition of servitude. And today we go on to another really beautiful emotional disposition that is central to bhakti, and that is called sakyam, which means friendship. That we actually have a relationship of friendship with that being that is supporting everything, or from which everything comes. Would you like to go into that topic today?
Yes.
Okay, it's a very rich topic. We're just going to be able to kind of touch on it. But take a look at the board, and I'm just using this story. Some of you may have heard it before, but I think it's very insightful. It just talks about perspective. It talks about assumptions or presumptions, how they affect our beliefs, and how to be truly objective means expanding the realm of possibilities, and how when we narrow the realm of possibilities, how we are prone to miscalculate or misunderstand. And that is that there's 2 little babies, infants. I don't know if you can call it an infant when it's in the womb, right? But they're together in the womb, and they're having a conversation. One of the babies says to the other, "What do you think about the idea about life after delivery? Have you ever thought about that before?" And the other baby says, "What are you talking about?" It says, "You know that after delivery, like there's a whole nother life, you know, in another realm. That's absurd. It's impossible. Why would you even entertain such a silly idea?" "Well, why do you think it's so silly?" "Because we can't see that world. What evidence is there that there's that world is out there? You know, and how would we survive? Well, maybe we would have other powers. Maybe it would be like other laws would be operating in there. Maybe we would eat through our mouth. Maybe we could use our legs to move around in that realm. We'd have freedom to move to different places." That's crazy. The only way that we eat is through this tube, right? And this tube is far too short to go into some other realm. Where are you getting these silly ideas? This is absurd. And what would we do when we're out there? How would we survive? Well, maybe mother would take care of us. Mother? What are you talking about, mother? You believe in these silly ideas, these childish, conceptions. There's no evidence for mother, Well, some people say that mother's providing everything, Where is this mother? Well, some people say that mother is all around us. And that if you're very quiet, that sometimes you can hear mother, "Oh, get out of here, This is ridiculous. You understand? So when we speak about friendship and friendship with God, I think a lot of people may say, "Okay, come on, you got some silly idea here, you need some, you're psychologically so weak that you need to entertain the idea that there's some cosmic friend in the world that's taking care of you," and so on. But really, let's be objective. Let's truly be objective and say, how do we determine where we are in existence? How existence may be, how there may be realms of existence that are beyond our perception, how we may be supported in ways that are beyond our perception, right? How is that baby supported in the womb, you know, in ways that are beyond its perception, right? Everything's being provided by a benevolent being that's providing its body, providing its food, and providing love and care, right? You can't see it all, but it's all there. So from another perspective, someone can see it all, right? And given the right circumstances, eventually that baby will be able to perceive all that too. So why is it so silly to not entertain the idea that there is a benevolent supporter that's providing everything? Maybe we should see, from the micro, we should assume the macro, or at least entertain the idea. And if we're not willing to entertain that idea, then are we really being scientific? Are we really being objective? Or are we just thinking in small ways, narrow ways? Maybe because of our own psychological insecurities. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so could you flip to the next slide, please? So this is the eighth of the ninth expressions of bhakti here, sakyam, becoming the friend, the inner orientation of friendship, a mutual bond of affection with God, trusting Him, opening one's heart to Him, and walking with the confidence that He is one's dearest well-wisher. Right? Just in the Bhagavad Gita alone, there's a lot of talk about Krishna speaking to Arjuna and saying that I'm your friend. You're very dear to me. I'm not only your friend, I'm the friend of everyone. I'm inside the heart of everyone, right? And I'm operating as their dear friend. It's much of the Bhagavad Gita is a call. Just reconnect with me. I care about you. Be assured, right, that I'm your friend. Now, could you flip to the next slide? I think you got to do the down button. There you go. This is, what we're talking about here is this idea. We're looking at different ideas of reality. Now, the reality of the second baby that was saying, what are you talking about? Can't you see? This tube is how we eat, right? It's short, and there's no other way that we could eat. To think that you eat through the mouth, we've never ever seen anyone do this before, right? Why would you think that that's even a possibility? There's no evidence, right? This is, similar to people that they look and they believe the ultimate reality of the universe is in personal machinery, right? That there was a big bang, nobody can quite explain it, but set all that aside and just accept that this whole thing is just machinery. Your body, even your own awareness, is just a random arrangement that's going to fall apart, and then nothing's left afterward. But the bhakti yogis are saying, that's why accept that, right? And here's a very strong tradition, a very strong tradition of philosophy, a very strong tradition of language, a very strong tradition of medicine, a very strong tradition of theology, a very, very powerful tradition of arts, and it has its explanations, a very strong tradition of science, cosmology, right? And it has its explanations, strong explanations, consistent explanations, sensible, rational explanations about how this universe is not merely an impersonal machine, but how it, at its deepest level, when you really understand it, you'll see that reality is relational, that the whole machinery is moving through relationship and for the purpose of relationship. And one verse, just one verse, that speaks to this in the Bhagavad Gita is the last verse of the 5th chapter, 529. It's a very interesting verse, and I think it speaks to both our hesitation to accept these kind of ideas, as well as the assurance of what is accomplished through them. what is accomplished through this faith and where this faith can take one. So this is how Krishna concludes the last verse of the 5th chapter. He begins by saying, Bhoktaram Yagna Tapasam, that I am the enjoyer of all sacrifices and austerities. Now, that statement right there is like, excuse me? Every austerity that someone does, every sacrifice that someone makes, you have the audacity to say that that's all meant to please you. Okay, I'm right off the bat, I'm uncomfortable with that statement, right? Next statement. I'm also the Sarvaloka Maheshwaram. Now, Ishvara means one that can control, like a boss, you could say, right? A foreman or something like that is the Ishvara, right? Here, Krishna says, I'm not just the Ishvara, because there's so many Ishvaras, right? One person has a boss, and then that boss has a boss, and then that boss has another boss. He's saying, I'm not just the Ishvara, I'm the Maheshvara, the Maha Ishvara. I'm like the Ishvara of all Ishvaras. I'm the supreme controller. Supreme controller of what? Sarvaloka, all places, all planets. You name it, there's not a spot that I'm not the supreme controller of. All right? I'm beginning to feel still more uncomfortable with this proposition of reality, right? We've all had, whenever we see someone start to flex, we start to think, come on, man, leave me alone, right? Give me some space here, right? So those two statements, unless one is in a place to... Now, what if the mother said, hey, I'm supplying everything? No, don't tell me that. I don't want to hear that, you know? It might potentially be uncomfortable for that second baby to entertain. But the first baby's like, yes, of course, mother's supplying everything for us. What's the problem? Why? Because mother cares about us, right? The third line, Suhridam Sarvabhutanam. Su, in Sanskrit, it's commonly used as a prefix, and it means like good. Something that's su is good. Hridam, or Hridaya. Hridaya means a heart. So Suhrit is a word for friend. It means friend. And there's different kind of friendships. But literally what Suhrit means is that one who has nothing but goodness in their heart, or nothing but good feelings for you, or good intentions for you. Suhrit is a very good friend, right? Have you ever had someone tell you like, oh, you know that other person? They're really not your friend. Have you ever heard someone tell you that before? Right? Like, they walk around, they talk like your friend, but you should hear what they're saying behind your back. They really don't have good intentions for you. They don't want. Have you ever noticed sometimes you're in a relationship with, it's supposed to be that you're friends, but that through their behavior, you can see they really don't want good things from me. They actually want to see me fail, right? They actually are happy to see me suffer in some way. That's not a friend. A friend is suhrit. A friend is someone that deep in their heart, they have nothing but the best intentions and the best feelings for you. Krishna is saying, I am suhridam sarvabhutanam. I'm the good-hearted friend of every living being. That's who I am. And then Gyatva Mam, one who knows me this way, Shantim Richati. They achieve Shantim. They achieve peace. You've heard the mantras. Shanti, 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 peace, peace, peace. This is the person that achieves peace, right? So, excuse me. If we are truly objective, we can see our position as very vulnerable, right? Every one of us is moving around in a body that one little germ could wipe it out and wipe out our existence. That's all it takes. One little accident. We're moving around in these cars. And sometimes there's a little line in the road that separates the two. Sometimes there isn't. In a moment, these cars can crash and it can cause death. Well, then why do you get in them, right? Does this really happen? Yes, it happens all the time, right? We're so vulnerable. One little slice, one little accident, one little germ, and our existence is finished. We are actually in very vulnerable positions. We're all moving towards death. And on the empiric level, it's very unclear what happens after that time, right? So let's face it, we're vulnerable. Whether we want to admit it or not, we're all seeking shelter here or there. We're seeking shelter in a home. We're seeking shelter in a relationship, right? We're trying to arrange circumstances by which we're protected and given shelter. And in whatever arrangements that we make, we know that in the end, they're going to be insufficient, right? But it's natural for us to seek that shelter. Everybody is doing it one way or another. Krishna is saying, if you're going to seek a shelter, seek the one that's worthy, right? And what does that shelter need to be if we're actually going to be protected, if we're actually going to be cared for, if we're actually going to be secure? That shelter is going to have to be two things. It's going to have to be powerful, right? Powerful to withstand whatever other challenges or whatever dangers that we face. Not just powerful, but all powerful. Because if that shelter isn't all powerful, then what's more powerful can overcome it. So that shelter should be all powerful. Sarva Loka Maheshwaram, right? All powerful. And at the same time, entirely benevolent, entirely kind, entirely loving, right? Suhridam Sarvadehinam. So Krishna is saying that this universe is relational. There is a being that you have a natural relationship with. Fortunately, that being is very friendly towards you, has nothing but good feelings for you. And also, fortunately, that being is all powerful, right? There's nothing that can overcome that being. That is your natural shelter. Just like when we consider this analogy is one of the strongest for understanding our relationship. There's the sun and the sunshine, very powerful one. And another one is the leaves of the tree to the root, right? Every leaf on the tree is dependent on the root, right? Here he says, Bhoktaram Yagnatapasam, all sacrifices and austerities are meant for me. Why you, right? Why can't, if I'm a leaf on the tree, why can't I offer it to another leaf on the tree, right? But if you want to care for a leaf on the tree, where do you put your effort? Where do you water it? Do you water the leaf? Right? No, you water the root. And someone could say, well, why are you pouring that water on the ground? Right? Why not pour it on one of the leaves so it can benefit from it? Because there's a root there. What root? I can't see any root down there. No, the root is underground, but it's supporting everything. It's nourishing everything. It's giving vitality to everything, right? This is a science, right? And it's all these macro, micro things. You know, we see it in them. Look at a tree, understand the universe. Look at a baby in the womb, understand your position in the universe. Think about these things, right? You pour water on that root that you can't see, and it nourishes every leaf. If we learn to live, to sacrifice, for the pleasure of the Supreme, we actually connect through love with every living being. If we actually learn to revolve around that center, we reach a state of harmony from which every living being benefits, right? It's because we're all operating as if we are all each the center that we're constantly in a state of conflict, constantly in a state of anxiety, constantly in a state of suffering, you know. If we escape it for a little bit, we quickly find ourselves right back there again. Some form of anxiety is always right there, just behind us, just over our head, just re-entering our consciousness, you know, with the slightest change in the external circumstance. Krishna's saying, I'm your shelter for all of that. I'm your friend. If you can understand my friendship, if you can cultivate a sense of friendship with me, then you're going to find peace. Peace from, and it's not just this naive, it's not, you know, someone might say like that second baby in the womb, oh, this is just some naive, silly idea. No. This is based on some serious contemplation, some serious observation, some serious yogic experience, some very powerful testimony, and something that one can experiment with himself and gradually cultivate and feel more and more in their own mind, in their own heart, this experience of dasyam. Can you click to the next? Okay, those are all the notes I had on that. Do we have any questions about that? Any thoughts about that? Yes, I'm a video.
The focus is on cultivating a friendship. Why is it not more of a focus to cultivate this like parental relationship with Krishna?
Okay, so what Amavidya is referring to is something really fascinating, and we are getting into the more esoteric aspects of bhakti now, right? These relationships and these emotions that one feels, and one incredibly brilliant and significant and important acharya, or a great teacher in the bhakti tradition, named Rupa Goswami, he did something very fascinating. He reached back to a tradition within the broader yoga culture, and it's a tradition of drama. There's a whole, like I was kind of alluding to earlier. When we say the faith in this idea that there's a benevolent being that's behind everything, one can try to just pass it off as this is just a silly, childish belief. The point that I'm making is it's the testimony of a very powerful culture. It's a statement of a culture that is incredibly rich in all different fields. So within this culture that grows out of the Vedic literature, there's a whole science of drama. What is it called? Dramaturgy? Is that how you pronounce it? Anyone know? Dramaturgy. Does that sound right? Okay. Just like there's a science of music, if you study music, then you learn about all the different elements of music. You learn about harmony and melody and tempo, et cetera, et cetera. And, you go to school for this. You really learn the significance of each and how by adjusting them in different ways, you can express different emotions through music. Speed up the tempo, it has a particular emotional effect. Slow down the tempo, increase the volume, decrease the volume. Remove the melody and just leave the beat. All of these have different emotional effects. And someone that's a real master of music knows how to engage these. They know the different scales, right? How different notes work together and how other ones are, what is it like? Some are discordant and others are, but Hari Prabhu, help me. Huh? Consonant and yeah. So how you can build emotion, convey emotion through the combinations of the different elements of music, right? That's the same thing is there in Sanskrit drama, this ancient science of drama, where they break it all down. Like they say, okay, there are different types of heroes in a story. They give you variety 1, variety 2, variety 3, variety 4. There are different types of openings to a drama, right? Different types of closings of the drama, different ways to introduce this element and that element. And one studies all the elements of drama, and they find that they can begin to convey emotion through drama. The whole idea is that the dramatist or the writer of the drama will blend these elements in such a way where the audience gets lost in the drama and feels deeply the emotions that are meant to be conveyed through it. Makes sense, right? Yes? And so it's a very incredibly thoughtful, powerful tradition of drama that's there in the Vedic tradition, the Sanskrit tradition. What Rupa Goswami did was he reached back to that science. It's really a science of relationship and a science of emotion. And he took all the categories and all the patterns and he applied them to the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which tells all of Krishna's Leelas, right? And so it really shows how sometimes when we see Krishna doing these amazing things, like you'll see a picture of Krishna dancing on top of a multi-headed snake. You'll see Krishna lifting up Govardhan Hill. He's lifting up a mountain. So many other things. And people will look at that and say, oh, obviously this is the Hindu mythology, right? These are stories that they tell. You know, they might say these are silly stories, these are childish stories. They might say, actually, if you really look into them, there's a lot of interesting ideas conveyed through these, or there's even some wisdom conveyed through these. You have to go still higher, or if you want to say still deeper, to understand what's really being conveyed through these. But when you understand it, you see there's always a reason why Krishna is doing this. And that reason always has to do with love. It always has to do with relationship. He's lifting that hill and bringing everybody under it because it's creating a certain circumstance by which the loving emotions that he has and his devotees have for him are intensified. Just like in a movie, right? They say this is how you write a movie. You have your protagonist, and the protagonist has to do something right at the beginning of the movie that makes you feel good about them, even if it's a very small thing. Even if they're a criminal, they do something small even that makes you a little bit sympathetic towards them. You begin to identify with that person a little bit. And then what do? You give them trouble, right? They have to have some kind of difficult circumstance that makes you feel more sympathetic and more concerned and more involved. And then what do? Give them more trouble and more trouble and more trouble, right? If you read books on screenwriting, this is how they describe it, right? And then eventually that has to be resolved. But it's usually what's being resolved is the emotions and the love that people have, right? It comes together, then there's some obstacles, right? You overcome the obstacles, it comes together again, right? And you go on this emotional ride. Krishna's Leelas are arranged, the circumstances are arranged by one of his energies to create circumstances by which the love that he feels and his devotees feel becomes intensified. That's why he's dancing on top of the snake. That's why he's lifting the hill. That's why he's doing all these different things. And so part of that analysis means breaking down the primary ways that people love, the different types of love, and then breaking those primary categories down into more subcategories. And so the love that Krishna shares with his devotees in Vrindavan, or the love that his devotees feel for him, is generally categorized, especially in the relationships of friendship, which is this word we had up there, sakyam. And then vatsalya, it just means a parental type of love. It doesn't mean that everybody is Krishna's parent, but the love, the kind of love, the elements of love that are there in parenthood are felt by many devotees. Now, there's actually, it kind of builds as a little ladder. I don't want to get too involved in it, but it's actually really important stuff. When the yogis look at matter, they break it down into, especially the gross matter. They call them the mahabhutas, the 5 really tangible aspects of matter. There's subtle aspects of matter like the mind, the ego, and the intelligence, but we can't really see or touch them very much or experience them. I mean, we do experience them, but they call the mahabhutas, these more tangible elements of matter: earth, water, fire, air, ether, right? Going from the least subtle to the most subtle. And ether is perceived by one sense, by the ears. And then, what is it? Air is perceived both through the ears as well as by the touch. You can feel it. And then fire includes the other 2, but you can also see it. And then taste has all the other 3, but you can also taste it. And earth has them all. You can also smell it. So all of those, each one has the previous elements plus 1. And so the ways that one can love Krishna, there's servitude, which there's a type of love wherein the relationship is one person is the superior and one person is I don't, the language sounds a little harsh, but in other words, have you ever had a relationship with someone who you highly respect? It's likely that they're older because being older lends naturally to that relationship. Maybe a teacher in your life who you respect. This person knows more than me. This person is more experienced than me. My relationship is to show them respect and gain from them. And their relationship towards me is they've taken an affectionate liking to me and they share with me. Have any of you had that kind of relationship in your life? Hopefully, right? Sometimes that relationship is there with a parent, sometimes it's there with a teacher or some kind of mentor, right? I'm your servant, right? That's dasyam. Now, the next, if you go up the ladder one, you come to sakyam, friendship. In friendship, we still want to serve. We still want to satisfy the other person. But it also includes a feeling of equality, that this person isn't like superior to me. We're kind of on an equal level. And that feeling of equality opens one up to a deeper sense of intimacy, right? The removal of this distance. And then if you go up the ladder one more, you come to this parental type of love. And parental love, it includes service, it includes removing the distance, but it also includes even feeling superior. In other words, the one that I love is dependent on me. In this stage of love of God, one feels that God needs me, right? It's that feeling that's essential to this particular flavor of love. And then if you go up to still one more, you come to the romantic love, madhurya, which includes all the other ones before, but is intensified still more, right? There's no more intense emotions than in the emotions of romantic love. So your question was, it's talking about sakyam here. What about vatsalya? What about parental love? And the idea here is that this dasyam is present in vatsalya. It's present I'm sorry, not dasyam, but this sakyam. This feeling of friendship means there's no longer any distance, that this being is in another category than me. And so that plays out, this feeling of friendship. It plays out in all the other higher rasas, in parental love or in romantic love. It's there. So what we're discussing now, how the rules of Sanskrit drama were just a perfect way to be able to look at Krishna's Leela and not be bewildered by it, not say, well, why is he, fighting this demon, or why is he running around with these girls? Why is he with many girls? Isn't it moral to be with one girl? And all of this kind of gets answered through examining these leelas through the lens of the rules of Sanskrit drama. It becomes super revealing. And so a whole book was written, 2 books really were written on that, the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu and the Ujjvala Nilamani. And if one reads these books, then Krishna's pastimes no longer seem like, oh, that's silly, childish mythology. One begins to realize, if one looks at it objectively, one doesn't necessarily have to believe it's all true, but if one's objective, you have to admit, this is an absolutely incredibly thoughtful, sensitive, brilliant theology. Whether one believes it or not, if one's going to be objective, one has to say, this is incredibly well-developed theology. So Sakyam is part of that. Can we move through this world feeling right in the core of our heart that I have a friend here, that God is not some tyrant, that there is some kind of Sarva Loka Maheshwaram, that this world is controlled, and that controller is a friend, that I have this connection with this benevolent force. And when I see that way, it's really entering into another level. One level of spiritual realization is just that I am eternal. I'm not this body, I'm not this mind. I'm not any of these false identities that I've assumed in the past. Man, woman, black, white, etc. None of that's true. I'm beyond all that, right? That's called Brahman realization. And that's a very powerful state of realization. But it's not the end of the line. In one sense, it's the first powerful step into spiritual realization. But the next powerful step of realization is called Paramatma realization, realizing that God is within the heart of every living being and in every atom, and that every atom and every living being is within God at one and the same time. This is called I know it sounds a little wild, but the yogis perceive this, and we can all perceive it as well. When you get that, that's when you shift to the idea that the world is not happening to me, but it's happening for me. You begin to realize, okay, this divine friend is arranging everything in my life. And every aspect of my life and every challenge in my life becomes an opportunity to deepen that relationship. I see it happening where my friend is putting me in the circumstances by which I can better understand myself and my relationship. And at every step, circumstances that would seem unfortunate, I'm able to process them as fortunate. Things that seem like they are trials or tribulations, I begin to accept them with open arms and see them as an incredibly fortunate circumstance in which to grow, because I have this confidence that there's a friend behind it all along. And not just a friend, but the friend with all of this controlling power. We have a question in the back. Can we get the microphone? Please, because, oh, you're just stretching your arm. Okay. I thought you were saying, I don't want the microphone. Okay. Well, why don't we open it up for other questions at this point? Yes, Amiti.
I just have more of a comment. So I'm pretty new to all this, and I first approached it with why, and now I'm thinking, why not?
Yes, yeah. That's the difference between. Well, that's when you're entering into true objectivity. It's our conditioning that makes us think without really reasoning that, oh, this idea of like a benevolent friend that's supporting the entire universe. This is a silly idea. It's based on your need, your psychological weakness. But when we hear someone say that, unless they can back that up with some true reasoning, right? That's just an accusation thrown out there. What's your reasoning? Why are you assuming that my faith in this is based on a psychological weakness? Show me the flaws, real flaws, not weak ones like there's no evidence for it. Well, our perception is so limited. Or maybe there's evidence for it everywhere, right? Like, yes, mother is everywhere. You're just not seeing it. Maybe you need to be more quiet and really listen, right? So if someone just throws out an accusation, this is your childish idea, and it's based on your own psychological weakness, well, perhaps it's really coming from their psychological weakness, right? If they're not capable of being truly objective about this, then maybe they have a psychological weakness that's preventing them from opening up to the possibility, right? And so that's when we begin to say, not why, but why not? Maybe this is a possibility. Let me examine it. Let me see if this idea, this presentation about how the universe works is solid. Let me see if the source that it's coming, because a lot of times in life, we have to accept the truth based on testimony. Things that we haven't seen before, things that we have no experience of, many such things we're very convinced are true, even though we've never had any direct perception of them. Why? Because of someone's testimony. But there's so many testimony. Okay, testimony that we feel is valid and trustworthy, right? Then we accept it. I've never been to China, but I'm accepting so many things about it, right? From other people's testimony. So we need to find a source of testimony when things are beyond the realm of our perception, or even beyond the realm of our inference. Then testimony. Let's hear from different sources. And when we look at these Vedic texts and the whole traditions that grow out of them, it's such a tremendous source. It's such an unbelievably powerful source. It's not just one book. It's a it's a massive collection of literature with all kind of sciences and practices, yogic practices, practices of medicine, different beautiful, just like we're talking about, just the language itself, Sanskrit. This goes back thousands of years. And the scientists and the computer scientists now say this language is the most advanced language. This is the perfect language for computers. This is like, I'm not even so good with even understanding why that is, but they understand why it is. All the technicalities in this language it's not easy to create a language like that. There are brilliant minds behind it. Mathematics, architecture, arts, medicine, what to speak of all the yogic practices and the theology behind it. It's a tremendously powerful source of information with all kind of insights that it doesn't seem they should have had the ability to know in their time. So it should have, maybe one doesn't necessarily have to believe everything it says, but if you're not willing to respect it and engage with it respectfully, then my suggestion is that maybe that person has a psychological weakness, that there's some reason why they're hesitant to accept that these things might be true. And I cannot find any solid reasoning that should have me accept the idea that, or have me reject the idea that there's a benevolent being behind the universe, right? You can't show me any solid reasoning that that's not at least a possibility. And when I turn to these texts, and I see all that they have to say about it, they're not just throwing it out there in a weak presentation. These are really serious thinkers. And I would say still, my faith is still more than just serious thinkers. These are experienced yogis. These are people that are sharing their own experiences. These are people that are saying, yeah, here are the paths that you can follow to achieve this experience. I've experienced, and I can show you the path. And if you start to walk on it, you can find that my faith starts to increase more at every step, right? Step by step by step, this is increasing. So there's so much, again, there's so much in the Bhagavad Gita where Krishna is reaching out to Arjuna. He's trying to help him understand that of all the different things that you can do with your mind, the most powerful thing you can do is bring it to that root of all existence. And he's saying that this has been spoken about in the ancient Vedic literatures for thousands of years. Arjuna, you're familiar with it. You know about this. I want to assure you that when these texts spoke about that supreme existence, that ultimate Brahman, that basis for all reality, that source of everything, that they were talking about me as a person. I am that person that is all of that. And on top of that, I'm your friend. So bring your mind to me, right? Why, when I tell you that I am the Sarvaloka Maheshwaram, that I'm the controller of all controllers of all different planets, I'm not bragging to you. What I'm trying to help you do is say, I'm a worthy shelter. You can take shelter of me. You can trust that when you invest in me, you've invested in the most intelligent or most worthy way. So don't hesitate. Go ahead, let go. And that final message of the Gita is sarva dharma parityaja. All of these different dharmas that we do, you can in one sense set them all aside and simplify the whole process. Sarva dharma parityaja, mam ekam sharanam vraja. Come to me for your shelter, right? That solves, it completes all the different dharmas, all the different yoga processes, going right to the root directly, right? That's the ultimate message in the Bhagavad Gita. And when you know this, you know God is your friend. You know God in your heart as a friend. If you know yogis like this, you see. Maybe you get a chance to meet one of these yogis, like one of these real yogis up in the mountains here. And you can see they've got nothing, right? They maybe live in a cave. Their possessions are basically, 2 pairs of robes and a bag with maybe a blanket or 2 in it. Practically nothing else, right? It seems like they're very vulnerable, like to the elements. It seems like it could be a very empty life. You know, no family, no friends. How are you so happy? Why is there this glow in you, right? I do have a friend. I have a friend right in my heart. I feel it. I'm not just thinking this, but I'm actually feeling it. And through that friendship, I feel a friendship with every living being. When I'm sitting there in my cave and a snake goes by, I say, there's my friend the snake, right? When a tiger comes by, I say, there's my friend the tiger, right? I don't feel any hostility or fear of any living being. I know I have this friend in my heart at every moment. And that realization allows you to pass through life as a real yogi, free, actually really free. So this sakyam is when the bhakti is achieving a state where you're actually relating to God. You're feeling the presence of God in yourself. You're very happy to feel that. It's a tremendous, just like when you get a really good friend in life. In what sense, that's the most valuable thing you can have, right? We may get money, we may get position, but isn't it better just to have a friend? If we have no friend in this world, that's the empty life, right? But actually that friendship is just a reflection of the deepest friendship, the realest friendship, the eternal friendship that's always there. I think we're out of time. Yeah, we're over time. Okay, so we have one more to go, and that's Atmanavena, surrendering everything. We'll speak about that tomorrow. But thank you so much. What a wonderful group here. I'm so happy to see so many nice people here coming every morning. It's a joy to be with you. If you'd like to hear more of the earlier classes or future ones, Gabrielle will be right outside the door. I also have a podcast, Wisdom of the Sages, with many, many episodes. That's there too. And please stick around for the Kirtan as well. Thank you so much. Hari Om. Tat Sat.